So again, what I just kind of went over is we're in the portraits and index section of the website, and we have already uploaded our portrait disc. If you hadn't uploaded your portrait disc yet, you could upload the whole disc here under upload portrait disc or folder. But what I'm going to do is flow my portraits. So I am going to first check this little link up here that says show duplicates. And this is going to show me if I have any duplicate files. So once you click show duplicates, you're going to be able to go in and click on these students to see if they're actually duplicates of the same kid or if there's just two kids with the same name. So it'll give me the picture. Obviously, this is a different person, so we just leave it alone. We've got a Jack Brown, and that person is obviously a different Jack Brown. So sometimes in big schools like this one, you will have duplicates. So they're not really duplicates, they're just kids with the same name. So you want to check all of those. When you're done checking them, if you were to have two kids that were the same, let's just pretend Jack Brown here is the same person, you can select both of these Jack Browns, and then you would go to merge and select merge. And then you would choose which photo you want to make primary. Click on the make primary button and then merge the student. And what that's going to do is it's going to basically make it so that person's not getting flowed twice into your portraits. So that's an important step to make sure you do, just so you don't have duplicate of the same kid showing up. Once you've checked all of your duplicates, then you're ready to go ahead and flow your portraits. So we're going to click on the flow portraits button. And we're going to start from scratch. So I'm going to hit the create option. And I have the option to flow as one group or to flow two groups into a single page. And so what this means is I'm just going to do one portrait group, but if I wanted to like flow my freshmen and my sophomores together, I could do that option. So I'm going to flow my freshmen first.
Could you show me again what you clicked to get that up?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Let me start
A little behind.
So I'm under portraits and index.
Okay. Yeah.
Flow portraits.
Okay.
And then from there, I'm going to have the start from scratch option selected. And I'm going to hit create. I'm going to click flow one group. 99% of you are going to have this option. And then I'm going to select the grade. Based on the default settings, which is 6 rows and 5 columns, it'll tell me over here how many pages I need to make this work. So it's saying right now I have a lot of freshmen. If I want the pages to have 6 rows and 5 columns, I'm going to need 24 pages. So I'm going to scroll down to where we have our freshmen starting, which I can't remember where that is. So I got to look for a second. Sorry, guys, I can't remember where he put the freshmen. I think it's right for seniors. So it must be working backwards. Juniors, freshmen, here we go. Okay, so looks like he has his freshman mug starting on page 316. So at this point, you can just click on the ones you want.
Do you need to know how many pages you need to click?
So yes and no. So kind of like right here, he already guesstimated that he was going to need, he guesstimated that he was going to need 20 pages. And you can see from these settings that he is 4 pages short. So based on the ladder that he came up with, we would need to, if we wanted to keep these settings, we would need to add 4 more pages in here. Or we can adjust it so we have more rows and more columns. So maybe I do 6 rows and 6 columns, and now it fits. See how that works?
Yeah.
So for now, just for our sake, I'm gonna just do 6 rows and 6 columns. I'm sure he's probably gonna want to change that in the future because that's kind of a lot of kids to fit on a
When it
spread, but
says
we'll see what it
20
looks like.
plus,
Oh,
does
sorry.
that mean it's really 20 or is it 20 or who knows how much? Like I'm just,
It's 20 pages.
okay, it just says 20 plus, so.
Yeah, so it's 20 pages needed if we're gonna, and you'll see in just a second. So let me get to the next step, I'll show you. So basically it's telling us based on these settings, if we do 6 rows and 6 columns, we've got 712 freshmen and we've got 720 spaces based on these settings. So if you wanted fewer kids per page, you would need more pages. From here, we can decide if we want to keep names off to the left and right. We can put names below. We can add a second line of text. Like a lot of middle schools will do names below, and you might have a lot of hyphenated names. In that case, it might make sense to have a second line of text and change it from grade to custom. What that's going to do is it's going to create a second line of text in between each box so that if you have a really long name, their name is going to flow into that second custom line box. And I'm going to do this just to show you guys what that looks like. You can decide if you want square, rounded edges, or circle, whether you want a border or no border, whether you want the names to be all uppercase, all lowercase, title. If you do default, I believe it's title case. First, last, how you want them to show up and all that good stuff. I'm just going to keep everything default for now. The only thing I'm going to change is that 12 points is really, really big. Normally when you're flowing portraits, you want anywhere between 8 or 9 points, sometimes 10. So I'm going to do 9 points. And then I'm going to flow my portraits. So it'll think for a minute because it's got a lot of kids it's trying to flow. And once that portrait flow is done, this little gray box will become ungray. It'll take us to a screen right here that'll basically tell us our portraits have been flowed.
Heading to Math Exodus, just a reminder that Mr. Audie can really talk to most of you about a gift of time. So hopefully you can take advantage of that this afternoon. We know people are tired, they need a break.
So if I didn't make any other changes and I use those settings, this is what my portrait flow is going to look like.
It's time, it's not much, but it's
for that announcement to be done.
gesture of our appreciation for your hard work.
So if we were to make those changes, so right now 6 and 6, it's kind of gives you like a weird little bit of a square look. Some people like that, some people don't. If we wanted to continue working on this, we could just close, not save. Now we're going to go back to our portrait flow and we're going to edit it. So maybe I want to try some different settings. Maybe I don't want so many rows because I want my pictures to not look like squares. I want 5 rows. It's going to tell you, hey, you don't have enough pages for this. So you can either add pages or you can undo your last change. So I'm going to go ahead and up my columns to 7. And then I'm going to take my rows down to 5. Oh, shoot, I still don't have enough. Let's do 8. So you can kind of see it's kind of a little bit of trial and error. So now we have 712 kids to flow. We've got 800 pages. That means we've got some spots that we can play with. I am going to do what's called a knockout. And a knockout is basically if you want to make it to where there's spots on your page where certain portraits don't flow, you can do what's called a knockout. And I'm just clicking on these to knock them out. So nothing's going to flow in that spot. And I'll show you what that looks like. And it will take, the more kids you have, the longer this part takes when it's doing the portrait flow, because it is putting all those pictures in for you. So it might take a couple minutes. If you're a smaller school, it's generally pretty quick. If you're ever waiting for more than 2 minutes, that means something probably went wrong. And when it first takes you to this window right here, you'll see all the pages are blank. That's just because we haven't actually gone into these pages and saved them. Once we go in and save, those pages won't be blank anymore. They'll give us a preview. So this is what our new settings look like. We knocked out those pieces right here. And this is helpful for like, if you plan on doing like little mods or introductions or things like that, like maybe you want to have like a scoreboard or something up here, or like you have a question and answer that's going to be on your pages. That's where these could go. So you might do like little intros or say freshman or whatever you want to say. Does that make sense? So that's where that might come in handy. If you were to save, then you would get a preview generated. Save this real quick. This is being super slow. One thing to keep in mind when you're working on portraits is that after you work on a portrait, you can still go back in and manually make changes. So like you would be able to go back in, highlight someone's name and make an adjustment, adjust what shows up in the frame, anything like that. But if you reflow that down the road, you're going to lose all of those manual changes that you made. So here's our portrait flow. If we wanted to do another portrait flow, so we did freshmen, let's say we want to do sophomores now, you can go back in and create a new flow, and you can either start from scratch or you can just base it off of your 9th grade. So if you want to keep everything the same, you could just hit create, scroll down to your sophomores, or up to your sophomores, tell it, all right, we're going to work on 10th grade. So we have a lot fewer 10th graders. So we only need 17 pages for 10th graders based on these settings. So I'm going to go ahead and click on all my sophomores. And if you wanted to, you could also just enter the page range. I'm just going to click on them. So we have more than enough space for our sophomores. If we wanted to, we could go back in and maybe delegate some of these sophomore pages to the freshman pages if we wanted to like make our pictures a little bit bigger, or we could just do our knockouts differently. But I'm going to click on this button for now that says include knockouts. So it's going to copy the same knockout pattern that I have in the freshman pages. I'm going to hit next. And see it copied that setting for me. I knocked those out in my freshman, so it's knocking them out for me in my sophomore. I'm going to hit flow portraits. And it's going to take all of those settings from my sophomores or from my freshmen and apply that to my sophomores. And again, this part does take a little bit of time when it's loading. It's just because it's working with hundreds of pictures. So you just got to be patient during this point. Any questions so far?
I have a question, but I don't know, maybe you just haven't gotten to it yet.
Sure.
So my seniors get to do a senior signature. So underneath their picture is something that they design. I'm in the process of uploading those right now. How would those fit into this process?
Yeah, so that one's going to be a little bit more complicated, and I will cover that in a little bit because it takes a combination of doing a portrait flow and then doing some trial and error of creating a custom template where you're going to put those extra pictures.
Okay.
So I'll show you guys that in just a few minutes. And then I heard someone else maybe have.
Yes, this is Charlotte. For an elementary yearbook, am I doing the flow by classroom or by homeroom? I see you're able to drop down by grade. Do I just need to enter their grade as their teacher, or is there an option?
Yeah, so most people in elementary will end up doing their flow by homeroom.
Yeah.
So that's going to be something where when you're setting up your portrait disc, you might have to talk to Alicia, or your portrait company might already do it where they organize it by homeroom instead of by grade.
Okay.
But it should be the same. It should make categories for you. So like when I go into, I'll show you here. When I go into portraits and index and I go on my student roster, I'm going to have albums. And again, sorry, this takes so long, but right here, there's going to be albums, and it'll let me choose from like 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, or 12th grade. For you, it'll probably say like Miss Andrews' homeroom or Miss Johnson's homeroom. And if it
Okay.
doesn't, then we'll need to rearrange the portraits to go in the correct folders,
Okay.
which
Thank
is
you.
generally pretty easy. It sounds a lot scarier than it actually is.
Okay. Yeah, it just looked like the only option was to select by grade. So that's why I was curious.
Yeah, so right here, you actually have the homerooms option. And this is where you could organize things by homeroom.
Okay.
Okay, so if you have a student, let's say you flowed your portraits and then we have a new student enroll after your portraits are flowed. It's really easy to add them in. There's a couple ways to do it. The easiest way would be to take a picture of them. Let's just say this is their picture. And then you would click on this button, Make Portrait. If they uploaded through Community Upload or Yearbook Snap, a lot of this would be pre-populated for you. And you could just type their name. I'm going to create this person as a new student. So my student's name is Test, and they are going to be in 9th grade, and we are going to create them. So I just created a new student and gave them this portrait picture. Now, if we go back to our portraits and index, and we go to our flow, we're going to get a message saying, hey, your portraits have changed since you last flowed. It's recognizing that we have another student in here that wasn't there at the time this was flowed. So you always want to keep an eye out for this red text. If we don't need to make any other changes, all we'd have to do is click reflow. And that would add that kid to our portrait flow. The message I just got was that the page was locked. That's because I opened a page and didn't close it. So it's telling me I have to fix that before it'll let me flow it. Go down and see what I did here. Oh, there it is. See, I went into this page and I opened it and I didn't save it. So it's going to make me unlock it before it'll let me reflow. And these are all errors you'll probably encounter once in a while. So in order to fix that, I got to go back in and save this. And then once it's done saving, it'll let me reflow. Does that make sense, adding the student? Does anyone have questions on that part? Cool, easy enough. Okay, who all in here? So Bruce, I know you're high school. Carol, you're high school. Tom is high school. Does anyone else, do you guys all do senior quotes or senior signatures of some sort? Or is Tom the only one? Okay. So if you wanted to do senior portraits, it's a little bit trickier. What we're going to have to do for senior portraits is we would again go to portraits and index. Well, I guess actually the first thing we want to figure out is kind of what our layout is. How many kids you're going to have on a page and whatnot. So I'm going to go to portraits and index. I'm going to go to flow portraits. I'm going to start from scratch because seniors are generally always going to be different than everyone else. Generally, senior pictures are bigger than the rest of your underclassmen. Flow is one group. I'm going to pick my seniors. And I'm going to just assign these randomly because I want a lot of space. So I'm going to make my senior pictures. I'm going to do 5 and 5.
Just a quick question, Christina.
Sure.
So if some of my students are not very good at following directions, and when they uploaded their senior photo, they didn't mark it as a portrait, is that going to be a real pain in the butt to try to assign students to portraits?
No, not really. You're just going to have to enter a little bit more stuff manually. So instead of it auto-populating their first and last name, you might have to type it in. But that's
Okay,
about the worst of it.
I know you entered in grade 12 and then, well, okay, go ahead.
No, it's fine. I can show you that too. So basically, when you were to, if you were to click on that picture, I say they upload their senior picture and they don't put any information in with it, but we know who they are. In that spot, you could just click on add student from a list and you could drop that down and say, hey, this is Tom Mollison, he's in 12th grade. Do that manually and then it would link up.
All right, great, because I
Had
don't
put
have
that
the best.
information in. Oh,
kids
sorry,
with
go ahead.
following Directions.
Yeah, if they had put the information in, it would autofill. But if they don't, you just have to type a couple more things. So I'm going to pretend like I'm doing senior portraits. So I need 23 pages. And realistically, whatever it says you need, if you're doing senior quotes, add a few more pages on top of that. I'm going to add a whole bunch just to be safe for now. So here's my senior pages. It says I need 23. I'm going to do like 32. I'm going to hit next. And do you normally do your portrait, your senior portraits? Do you have the names on the sides or do you have the names below?
I'm pretty sure it's names. Well, let me look. I got one right in front of me.
Okay,
I feel like I should know, but
it's okay. A lot of times if you're doing quotes, it's common to have them below.
okay. Our names are on the side of the photos and the quotes are below.
Okay, so we'll do it that way, names on the sides. And then what we're going to want to do is a little bit more tricky than what we were doing before, because we're going to have to switch to manual spacing. And there's a little bit of math involved with this, and it's really just trial and error. So we're going to have our names on the side. Right now, these are the default settings. Our portraits are 95 wide by 158 high. And then these are our margins, top and bottom, spacing between rows, spacing between columns. So what we're going to want to change is your spacing between rows. We're going to want to make that way bigger. But in order to have extra space to put between rows, we have to make something else smaller. Does that make sense? So like either our pictures have to be smaller or we have to take space from the top or bottom margins to have that extra space to play with in the middle. So just for now, so you can kind of see what I'm doing, I'm going to make my, let's see here, let's make my width 80.
Well, I mean, alternatively, could you just put less photos on each page and just have one less row of photos?
Yes and no. You're always going to have to. So you could like change this, instead of having 5, we could do 4. But you're still going to have to adjust this spacing in between.
Got it. Okay.
And so realistically with seniors, you probably would only do like 4. So we'd probably have this be like, I don't know, let's see, 120-ish. And you would want to get out a calculator and actually like figure this stuff out, but I'm just kind of trying to get the idea across. So I'm going to make my spacing in between. Let's do 30. And you can kind of get a sense of what this is going to do. So this is going to give you that spacing in between. So you have spots to put your senior quotes. And this is all going to depend on how much space you want them to have for their quotes, their signature or whatnot. So I'm just going to do it based off this setting for now and see what that looks like. And again, don't do 12 point, that's too big. Let's do 10. And I want bold just for now. So I'm going to flow the portraits. This is just a starting point. It's going to give me an idea of what this looks like, and then we're going to tweak it from there. So I'm going to view my pages. Again, you're not going to have a preview until you save it. So based off the settings I just did, this is the amount of space we would have to work with.
So one quick thing, as far as the names being on the sides, what I mean, at least in my previous yearbooks, is that the names of the students are written vertically on the sides of each individual photo.
Oh, gotcha. So if that's the case, they probably did a little bit of manipulation.
Oh boy.
My guess is that they either did that in Photoshop or they actually went in and manually moved the side, like moved the text. Because the only way you can do it in here is either have names on the side or names below. Some people will upload Photoshop images where the name is going like vertically up the side and then the signatures down beneath, and then they just do each one like a Photoshop file, which is kind of a pain in the butt.
Yeah, I'd like to avoid that if all
An
possible.
easier way to do it, and what most people do, is just to do the names below. I'll show you. So what I would do, being a first year advisor and not wanting to spend forever and ever and ever on this, is I would do names below. I would probably start around a size 10 and make them bold. Do the same spacing, flow my portraits. And then I would have their quote or signature be underneath that. And you'll see what that looks like here in a second. And there's a lot of tweaking you have to do, but this is pretty much the most common way you see it. And you would get rid of the spacing off to the sides. Obviously, we'd make our pictures wider or add more columns, but you could do it like this, and then you could have your senior quotes be underneath. So let's do one more tweak here. So I'm going to edit this again. I don't like that big space on the side, so I'm going to go ahead and add an extra column. And I'm going to make these just a little bit wider to fill up the space. And I'm going to, I think everything else is good. I might add a little bit more spacing in between my rows. Oh, that's too much. If you put a number that's too much, it's going to turn red, letting us know we don't have enough space to do that. I'm going to flow my portraits again. You can kind of just keep tweaking it until you get the settings that you like. And then the second step would be, if you're doing senior quotes, we would want to make a custom template. And I'll show you guys how to do that here in a second too. Okay, so here's my new senior portraits page. And again, this is actually pretty small for your senior portraits. I don't like the way this changed the spacing down here either. So I think I'm going to refresh this. Sorry, let me just make one more tweak. I'm going to change this back to 80. Okay. So if I was going to make a custom template now, I would go in and I would grab a text box. And I would kind of figure out where I'm going to want these to line up. And you got to kind of figure out how many characters you need. And when I'm working on a template to get my senior quotes in, generally what I'll do, just so you can kind of see it, because if you put a text box down and then you click off of it, you can't really see where the text box is, which is kind of annoying. So whenever I'm working with templates for seniors, I'll just give it a border just for now, so I can see where my box is. And I will go up to object to get a sense of how wide my pictures are. So each of these, my pictures are 7.6. If you need to, you can click on the object that you're working with, and you can actually manually change it so it's exactly the same. So I can change this to 7.6, hit enter, and it's going to make that exactly as wide as your picture. And then from here, I would just make a custom template. So I'm going to align using my layout tools. I'm going to click on what I want to line it up to, hold shift. I'm going to go over to layout, click on this text box, and I'm going to align it left. So now my text box is exactly in line with this. And once I get it to the size I want, I'm going to make a copy. And I'm going to repeat this a couple times. The first template takes a minute, but once you get it going, it's not too bad. Then you can make copies of this on all your other pages. So seniors are always the most time consuming. And again, I probably wouldn't do them this close in reality, but I just kind of want you guys to see what the process would look like. So I'm going to copy all my boxes. Make my template, and I'm not going to do the whole thing because I want it to be a little bit faster here. I would align them using all my layout tools. And then once you get these perfect, you would want to kind of play with them until they're perfect. But once you get them perfect, you could then just duplicate this in each row. Is that kind of making sense?
Yeah, I think so. So the text boxes, I can just throw images into there too, right?
Yes.
Because that's the plan. I'm gonna have I have scanned items, like actual signatures that I'm gonna upload in there. So
Yep, exactly. And again, I'm doing this real sloppy right now. Like if you were
Yeah.
actually doing it, you would want to spend a little bit of time and make sure everything is lined up right. You're going through each one, but it's really just the first row that takes the longest, because after that, you can just copy and paste everything. So like if I got everything lined up, you can group these together.
I don't know if it's just like my eyes are deceiving me a little bit, but it looks like the bottom row of students have a lot less room to work with.
That's true. And I would have gone back in reality and I would edit that bottom margin.
Okay, I'm a little bit confused because I thought you gave a consistent space between each of the rows.
There is a consistent space between each row, but your bottom margin is different. So let me show you that.
Okay.
So the spacing is there's a space for between rows, and then there's a space for bottom and top margins. So your between rows is going to be here, here, and here.
Yeah.
But this is considered your bottom margin. So if we go back in and look, if we edit this now, you see how our spacing in between rows is 80, but our bottom margin is only 36.
Oh, okay, yes.
So we would want to adjust that because it seems like 80 is a good space. But now if I go in and I put, hey, I want 80 here,
You
we don't have enough space.
Okay.
We'd have to kind of like take it from somewhere else because all the numbers have to basically add up. So what we might do is take a little bit from the top, and then we might actually make this a little bit smaller. So maybe we do 70 here. Maybe we do 70 here. And now it fits. So that's where I'm saying it's going to be a little bit of kind of trial and error until you get, unless you're like really good at math, which I am not. But it's a little bit of trial and error. And once you get everything right where you want it, that's when you would make your template. So now it's a lot better.
So how then would you, and I'm sorry, because you didn't save that template on there, but I guess how do you, so you started creating that template, would you just save the template and apply that template to each one of the senior photo pages?
Exactly. So let me I'll quickly, this isn't going to be perfect, but we'll pretend it's great. So let's just say this is pretty much perfect. I got it to whatever I want. Make a couple copies. Oops. Again, you're going to use the layout tool. Oh, another thing to be aware of is like, see how I'm clicking these and these are slightly shifting. I've got fat fingers here. So make sure when you're clicking this to align your other stuff, it's not shifting, because if you accidentally like move your mouse or something, you might bump it. Just kind of keep an eye out for that. So I'm just going to get the first line done real quick. Okay, once I get this to where I want, I could just group it. All right, we're gonna pretend that this is exactly what I want. I'm gonna copy it. I'm gonna paste it. Okay, so these are my, basically my text boxes that I have. And I have these all grouped right now just for ease of putting them where I want. I'm going to select these all. Once I've got one page perfect, I'm going to go over to my layout and I'm going to mirror copy, which is going to put them on the other side. Now from here, I'm going to go to
Wait,
File.
what was that mirror? What did you do with the mirror?
Oh, sorry. I clicked on everything I wanted to copy, and then I
Uh-huh.
went over to this layout tool right here.
Yeah,
If I do that, you can mirror copy. So it basically moves everything I have selected on the left page and it puts it almost like it's a mirror on the right page.
cool. All right.
So that's how I was saying, like, it's kind of a pain in the butt to start with these, but once you get the first row, it goes really fast. So take your time on the first row and really get it perfect. And then you can just copy and paste. So I'm going to go now and I'm going to save this as a custom template. I'm going to call it senior quotes. I'm going to go ahead and close out of this page. And now I'm going to go to my plan book. I'm going to go to my custom templates tool. And I'm going to find that template that I just saved. It should all show up alphabetically. Did I just pass it? There it is. Senior quotes, I'm going to edit. So it's going to save everything that I had on that page. So what I want to do now is I want to delete the actual pictures because I don't want these showing up.
So if you delete the pictures here, though, you're not going to lose them.
Nope, it's a totally different layer.
Okay.
So I have all of these, and remember we grouped these. So I'm going to grab these all, and I'm going to ungroup them now. So you can see here's all of our pieces that we just made. And again, these are not perfect. I did them fast. So you can see there's different spacing in between each one. It's not exactly perfect. And just so you guys can see this, I'm going to put a fill in. This is not, oh God, I can't look at that. Hold on. Oof, that's better. Oh, there. Okay, so here's my senior quotes. In reality, this would be a text box. And I probably would have just filled it. I probably would have, when I made my first box, chosen the font size I want and the font that I want to use, because then when you duplicate those boxes, it's also going to duplicate your fonts. So you don't have to re-choose those each time you fill it in. Quote here. I would also go through and I would figure out how many characters fit in this box so that when you're talking to your senior parents, they know how many characters they can have in here if you're doing a senior quote. So once I have that, I'm going to save. Close. There's my little senior quotes preview. And now if I go back to my actual senior quotes page, there's somewhere, let's see. It's back up here. I can't remember where I flowed. Oh, here they are. So if I was to go into my portrait flow, I could just go into my template And there's your senior quotes. And again, this is not perfect. I did not do a very good job with this, but if you actually spent some time lining everything up, it would be a lot better. And then from there, if you were doing quotes, you would just go in and go ahead and type. If you were doing like photos of signatures or something like that, you could go down to your photo tray. And you could just drop those right in.
One quick question I do have. So if my photos are just slightly different sizes or dimensions, but all my boxes are the exact same size, will the photos that I drop in there stretch to the size or the dimensions of the box, or how does that work?
So what happens is that it won't really skew it. It will do the most accurate fill. Like this one is slightly wider. So at that point, you could go in and you could decide what you want to show up in the frame.
Sure.
And that's going to be true with some of these photos. Like sometimes you'll see for the most part, they did a pretty good job in having the eye line be right there. Sometimes you'll look and there'll be like one eye line that's way off. So at that point, you might want to go in and maybe, tweak it a little bit, either zoom in, zoom out, adjust it so that the eye line or the sizing is different. So in most of these photos, you can double click and you can adjust what shows up in the frame. And that doesn't happen a ton, but sometimes you'll see like with photographer CDs, like someone's head will be like super small or they'll look super far away. So in that case, if you had someone that looked like they were very far away, you might want to zoom in a little bit. I mean, not that much, but just remember that if you do that, if you go in and you kind of adjust, whenever you reflow, like if a new student comes in and you have to reflow, it's going to revert back to manual settings because this is its own layer. All of the pictures and all of the student name text is its own layer. So every time you reflow, it's going to take that off and put it back on.
So
Now this part is a template, so it would stay.
But it sounds like you shouldn't put any senior signatures in before you 100% have all your students
Yes.
done.
You want that to be the very last thing you do. Because like if you have a new student come in, if you end up reflowing, adding people, it'll all be off kilter. This isn't going to go with them. This is your last step.
Yes. Okay.
So if I were to reflow, everything that's in these boxes that you put on manually will stay, but all of this stuff will shift around.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing to be aware of, if you are going to be doing like boxes down below, is to look out for overflow text. And right now I'm not seeing any, but every once in a while, I just Control A and it doesn't look like, oh, here's one. See this little red dot?
Yeah.
That means there's overflow text. There's more text showing than the box can hold. So if I bring this down, I'll just delete this for a second so you can see, she's got a longer name. So what we want to do for that is probably we can either make the text box a little bit wider, depending on how, it's not going to fit. So we could either make the text box a little bit wider, or we can make the text a little bit smaller. And a lot of times what people do is make the text a little bit smaller. So you might go in and make this like a size 9. That's still too big. Maybe make it a size 8. I generally just do like a size 8 or 9 when I'm flowing portraits, just because of this reason. If you have hyphenated names, the other option would be to ask her, which name do you want to go by? So just keep that in mind. I always do hold Control A generally with the select tool on after I do portrait flow on my very last step, check for overflow text. So here's one, here's one. If you find that you're getting a lot, then it might be worth going back in to your portrait flow and changing that size to like an 8 or a 9. How you doing, Bruce? You hanging in there?
Yeah, hanging in there. I'm glad you're recording this though, and I hope I can show it to my class because
It's a lot. It's really easy if you're doing just regular underclassmen. Once you get into seniors and manual spacing, it gets a little difficult.
Yeah.
I generally always helped Troy with this part. So if you guys need help, I am more than happy to help you out.
how can I access this recording for maybe one of our classes in the next week?
Yep, I am. This is one of the ones I am planning to put on my YouTube channel here real soon.
Okay.
Other questions? So that's kind of portrait flow in a nutshell. Kind of going back to what you were asking, Tom, about if someone were to upload their photo without putting it as a portrait, the way that would work. Let's say these people uploaded their photo, but they didn't do it as a portrait. We could still go to make a portrait and we could choose if they already had a portrait, like say they already had their picture taken, but they want their senior portrait instead of this portrait. You could just choose from a list and start typing their name. Maybe this is, I'm sure there's a Haley somewhere in here, or Hayden. So this is actually Hayden. So if I were to click Hayden, I could just assign this as her new picture, and that would take the place of her old picture. If it's a new student coming in, that's where I would put her information here. This is Haley Cross, and she is in 12th grade, and then I could create her. And then that would go into my flow.